This is the original esport racing game. This is iRacing.
Iamaki may have taken his second win of the season last round at Sebring, but he has not yet caught Fabian Gerber. Today's race could present an opportunity for Ardo to take the points lead, but he's got to survive the incredibly tricky Oulton Part circuit to do so. Though tough enough in single-class scenarios, having both GTPs and GTOs circulating around this small and narrow track is bound to cause some frustration and damaged race cars. We'll see who handles it best as we get ready to watch Round 6 of the iRacing Kamel GT Series, and you'll see it all live here on the Global Sim Racing channel and the iRacing Esports Network. Hi, I'm Joe Peak, and with me in the booth is Nick Schmeg. Behind the scenes is our director, the Dr. Amjad Yaman, and he's using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. Nick, this is one of those tracks that sees lots of use in real life, but here on iRacing, it's sort of a rarity to show up on schedules.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Joe. Oulton Park is a pretty popular club circuit here in Cheshire, England, not only used locally, but also by the British Touring Car Championship and Motorcycle Racing Series. Today we use the International Bretons course, meaning we bypass the Hislop chicane, that second chicane down the hilltop straightaway. This track is both very narrow and very abrasive, like you said. Not only do the drivers have to overcome the bumpiness of the course that's over 4.5 kilometers long, or about 2.8 miles, but they'll have to keep in mind that with the high-speed Nissans and the heavy Audis, many of these 15 turns are very deceptive. It's hard to judge the apex and how much room you have here, especially when so many of the turns, like Shell Oil's corners, have NASCAR-like banking to them. With all that being said, it's almost annoying at this point for the drivers to remember that one of the things that makes Kamel GT great is the art of multi-class racing, and to say that you'll need your head on a swivel today is an understatement. It's hard enough to put a lap together here when you're the only car on track, like you said, and to get a better idea how one does that, let's send you down to the track for the GSRC lap guide.
All right, we've got Johnny Bell in the GSRC Nissan, so let's do a lap around Oulton Park. Most first corners tend to be good for passing, but Old Hall is a little too swift for that usually. As you approach Cascades, remember that Denton's is a little kink in the braking zone, so a lot of drivers will be drifting across the track for the racing line. Cascades will be an important bend to your lap because of it emptying onto the Lakeside Straight, but getting an off track on the exit will be easy, so watch out. Island Bend isn't quite flat out despite the Nissan's immense downforce, and it also blends directly into Shell Oil Corner. This hairpin looks like a prime spot for overtakes on the surface, but often you won't be able to tell who's defending until very late. Accelerating off the late apex, you're very quickly into Britain chicane. Don't get too daring with the tire stacks at the apexes because you can easily damage the car by clipping them. Now you blast over hilltop towards Knickerbrook. Some daring drivers will be willing to go side by side at this fast kink, but it takes some real trust in your opponent's abilities, not to mention your own. Clay Hill and Water Tower are easily flat-out affairs, but you've got to hug the left side to set up for Druids. This is a wicked fast double apex bend with a crest on the exit. Mistakes will be easy and costly. Finally, you've got one last chance for a potential overtake, and that's Lodge. Drivers will need to be gentle with the throttle though, because the track really drops away from you on corner exit. But as you come over Deerleap, you've now hopefully finished a lap around Oulton Park. It's a lap from the view on board the Nissan. Obviously, the GTO will be a little bit slower around here, but we've got championships for both of those classes at the ready, with drop weeks now included. And as you can see, Fabian Gerber still 5 points up on Ardo Iamaki, although Ardo closing thanks to a little bit to those drop points. His DNF certainly hurt him before it. It does bump him above Phil Lake, and Fabian Jungbluth as well finds himself one position up. John Keefe drops. He's still got 10 pocket points at hand if he needs them. At the GTP lights, as we glance at those, Hideki Koivisto leading the way. It is a 20-point gap back to Johnny Bell. Johnny could still close in on him, as we saw it is, or will see that it's 25 points for a win. And though Johnny Bell isn't likely to get wins based on his performance, you just never know in this series. Slee and Kopak round out the 4 drivers competing in that amateur championship. Let's go to the GTO championships. Nick, how are those looking?
Yeah, over in the Audis, it is Rob Olenek up at the top. Still, he's got an 18-point lead, and there's a tie for second place between Milan Arnozzi, who moves up there, and Nick Mukanos, who also moved up into second. You see Ben Lafter becoming the big loser out of last week at Sebring, dropping all the way from second down to fifth. He's only 1 point behind fourth place, though, Dennis Neidhart, but he had a heck of a run last week at Sebring. He finished second in that race, and he's looking to keep that momentum going today. We also have the GTU standings to pay attention to, the amateur category here. Reed Miller still atop this, but there's been some shuffling further down. Coincidentally, another tie for second here between Michael Haynes and Sergey Serbin. But this is 13 points back instead of 18. Caden Bean dropped to fourth with that. He sits 23 points back. James Walker still trying to get things going. The part-time driver sits in fifth, 33 points back.
And if you've never watched the Kamel GT series, you might be wondering what these races are like. Well, they're 40 minutes long, so this is effectively a sprint race. They have no stops for fuel during this. We are halfway through the season now. They will get another drop week, so if they have a bad race today, which for some I think might be likely, they will be able to drop that if it's their worst score of the season. You see 25 points for win. 20th place still gets a single point, so everybody out here today will at least be scoring points. Now, this race is brought to you on the iRacing Esports Network. As always, make sure and subscribe when you get the opportunity. All you got to do is go to IESN's YouTube page, click the big red button that says subscribe, and you get all of the Kamel GT series in your YouTube feed. Somewhat of a small field here today on an Easter weekend. Drivers obviously having real-world obligations, as well as we have World Championship races happening at the same time. Some top-level drivers tend to compete in this series, and, well, sometimes they've got other things that they have to elicit taking priority. Fabian Gerber, who is on the provisional pole for the prototypes, has already put his 2 laps in. We're waiting for Rob Olenek, who leads the GTOs in qualifying, to come around for his second just now.
Yeah, and it looks like one of those drivers that is not here for the Audi category, the GTO category, is Joni Hagner. We've seen him have to miss a few weeks, unfortunately, before. This is one of them, and he was going to be going for 3 wins in a row, but that will not be today. That's going to open the door for some opportunity up here.
Absolutely. Olenek, one of those drivers looking for a little bit of redemption, since earlier this morning he had a bad race over at Zolder in the Lotus 49. Ardo Iamaki also not here to try and attack and see if he can make further inroads on the championship hunt. But otherwise, we still have some very big names. Phil Lake has returned, although he's jumped over to the Audi. Milan Arnozzi is here. Nick Mukanos, Reed Miller. In fact, Reed was telling us how this was his first race in the Kamel GT series last time they showed up at this track, as John Keefe, the Hoosier, unfortunately discovering just how tough it is coming through Druids. That's his second lap, and unfortunately means that one won't count for him. See Keith Calhoun, who both of his laps had off tracks or were discounted in some form or fashion, meaning he will start from the back of the pack. Now, going through this chicane, that written chicane, one thing that I am curious about today, Nick, is how many drivers are we going to lose to those tire pylons?
Yeah, they are big and they are bulky. They're in the way, and it's hard to ignore them. They're kind of they remind me of the pylons we see in rallycross here on iRacing. Those big blue barriers that you have to watch out for. And Hopefully we don't have any off-roading today with them, but I think it might cause a little bit of havoc.
Big difference, though, is that iRacing implemented in Rallycross movable tire pylons. Over here, though, unfortunately, those are effectively solid objects. If you hit them, it's like hitting a concrete wall. And that chicane in general will probably make this very, very difficult to try and overtake at this circuit. Some of the drivers last week in the post-race interviews were discussing that, saying how it kind of takes away some of the chances to try to get some speed up and find a place around someone. Qualifying's effectively over, but we'll give it a little bit here as we watch Keith continue to put his warm-up in. Looks like the two Gerbers could get a brotherly 1-2 as they are on the front row. But a name that has challenged for wins in the past is certainly with him, Luis Emerton. Curious to see if he could take advantage by maybe keeping his car safe around here. This gives us a nice onboard view. Since we watched the onboard with the Nissan, now they can see it from the perspective of the Audis.
Luis Emerton, coming off of a DNF last week at Sebring, has yet to put a podium up for this season. But yeah, like you said, if he can keep it clean around here and hold off Fabian Jungbluth, who looks to be starting in 4th possibly, that'll be a great showing for him.
Certainly should be good points for a number of drivers out here. John Keefe, starting from 6th, should have a great opportunity. Hopefully Phil Lake also has better experience here in the Audis than some of the incidents he's been involved in the Nissans. But the qualifying's now over, so let's go through the grid. It's going to be Fabian Gerber on the pole for the GTOs, with Tobias Gerber starting P2. Luis Emerton will be on the 2nd row on the inside and 3rd, with Fabian Jungbluth starting 4th. Martin Krejcierik, P5. As I mentioned, John Keefe will start 6th. Row 4 has Hideki Koivisto and Johnny Bell. Polfair didn't get a lap time in, but he will start 9th in his class.
Over in the Audis, P1 goes to Rob Olenek with Nick Mukanos to his outside. Milan Arnozzi and Phil Lake are going to make up row 2, and Ben Lafter will round out the top 5. Reed Miller will be alongside of him, going to try to hold off a hard-charging Dennis Neidhart, who has a lot of momentum, and Sergey Serbin, who's in a points fight of his own. Aaron Cortez is down there as well, with Keith Calhoun and Michael Haynes rounding out our 20-car field today. They did not set qualifying times.
Hopefully the small field will help lighten the load on traffic slightly. Taking a glance at the weather, it is pretty ideal conditions, 90 degrees on the track surface, only a very slight wind of 9 miles per hour. And in typical, well, I shouldn't say typical spring fashion here for the UK, but a beautiful 65 degrees out. Hopefully we won't get too much cloud cover. It was certainly going in and out during the warm-up session before we got a live picture here. They're waiting for the rest of the field to grid up as they will take half a pace lap, head around Druids, and then Lodge over Deer Leap, and then they'll be released by that Porsche pace car. Seeing more and more of these drivers go from one of the retro cars to the other. Paul Ferrer also drove earlier this morning in the Lotus 49 and has jumped over to running in the Nissan now. You see the Iberian driver lined up and waiting to go. Coming up to that right double apex corner. Has certainly caught its fair share of drivers out over the years. Up and over that crest on the exit, you can see how drastic it is. One of those things these British road courses are known for is plenty of elevation change. And then you've got one more of those through the valley between Lodge and Deer Leap. You can really get a good feel for it here as you see the GTP cars plunge down and then that steep climb back up. They're all getting backed up now, and immediately before the pace car is even in, green flag is out. That catches a few drivers out. One of them splitting 3 wide up into 2nd place. It looks like that is going to be Fabian Jungbluth taking advantage of that frantic start, but incredibly in all of that, no drivers had any incidents. Let's go to the Audis.
Nick Mukanos was able to jump, or actually he got jumped by Milan Arnozzi, it looks like, at the start, so that's going to move Milan Arnozzi up to P1, but Rob Olenek pulled away from them. Phil Lake, Ben Laughter, Reed Miller, there's a traffic jam behind him.
Well, that was great heads up from those in the back. We're going to watch that replay of that start in a bit, but first we want to see if everybody gets through this first lap clean. We've already got the GTP cars having successfully navigated Britain's chicane. Without the Audis, though, they're all tiptoeing through single file. Nobody really in a hurry to try and cause a mess here.
Arnozzi's looking fast right off the start. He jumped up from third to second, and he's already got his sights set on Rob Olenek. He's trying to reel him in.
Bit of a battle behind them. Lake leads Laughter, leads Neidhart, all three close together coming through Druids. Nobody's going to be able to make an attempt on a pass through there. But still, we've got a couple packs of cars in the GTO class, but otherwise, most everybody's spread out in the GTPs, save for a couple cars from second to fourth. Got a replay of that start with an onboard for Martin Krejcik. He managed to move himself to third. Let's see from his perspective. Oop. Apologies, we'll have just a slight technical difficulty. We'll be back in a second with this. But I can report that it is still smooth sailing for most drivers, except for Luis Emerton, who just lost a position to John Keefe. That gives Keefe fourth place. We'll get picture back here in just a moment. Here we go. Wow, just picked the outside, squeezed through there. Actually, I think there was a tiny bit of contact.
And great start
from
for
above. Go ahead.
Just a great start for him. I mean, there's so little room to work with there. The overhead gives you a great perspective of just how little room there is. But look at him shoot there on the right side and come so close to the wall. I think you're right. There was contact.
Yeah, that was Jungbluth who got into him. And the car you saw squirming on the power, I believe, was Emerton. So that whole thing really just set off a chain reaction. In the meantime, as we watch Krejcik continue on the podium, sounds like we got a bit of a tussle between Neidhart and Laughter. This is for P5 in the GTOs. They come off of Old Hall Corner, working their way towards Cascades. You can see Neidhart in the purple and green car getting awful close. Wow.
That was a bold move up the inside there, for sure.
That's going to give him island corner. He covers off the middle of the track, then comes back to the racing line into Shell. So that moves him up into P5 for Dennis Neidhart. Right on board with Ben Laughter, working their way through the Britain chicane, seeing if he could find anything back on him, but it's just not a good exit. And in the meantime, side-by-side action ahead of them, and Arnozzi and Mukanos trying to take Knickerbrook too wide, and they somehow get through the other side, but that cost them a lot of time.
This is going to allow, that puts Mukanos up into second as Arnozzi's not done with him yet. Mukanos got jumped by him at the start. He got it back, but how long is that going to last? Because Milan's looking awfully fast right now.
But we can stay on this, but I just want to report that John Keefe overtook Krejcik about a lap ago through Britain's. Look at him ducking and weaving back and forth. Arnozzi once by Mukanos. Pokes his nose to the inside through Old Hall, but nothing doing there. Mukanos knows it. He defends coming down to Cascades, just covering the middle of the road to ensure there's no real good opportunity along this narrow, narrow track. They're already Starting to get a little bit of traffic round the outside, though. Deep onto the brakes, too deep onto the brakes for our Notzi. And that's going to send him off into the grass and not gaining a position, but losing one to Phil Lake.
Yeah, just not enough room to work with there, with a bit of a battle for third place in the prototypes, it looks like.
Absolutely, that is John Keefe. You see in the red and white machine, they're already hitting that traffic I mentioned before. That's Aaron Cortez. They sneak by. It's a train of 4 cars. Keefe leading, Krejcik leading Emerton, and then Tobias Gerber, surprisingly, despite a good qualifying, has dropped back and really lost out early in this race. Streaming their way up towards Britain's. Oulton trying to cut it as close as they dare. Krejcik a little slow through the chicane. How daring is Emerton going to be? Looks to the outside, then to the inside. He's going to stay in line, not willing to risk it through Knickerbrook this early.
Don't forget about Tobias Gerber there in 6th. He's in this group of cars as well. He's caught them.
Oof, he actually catches a little grass on the outside of Druids, but he gets away with it. Costs him some time to the car of Luis Emerton. They duck down through the valley and then over Dearly. Continue on for yet another lap. Up in front of them, Fabian Gerber continues to streak away. You can see he just set the fastest lap of the race despite having to work through a little bit of traffic. Well, long lakeside up towards Island Bend. The fight for the podium, the final spot on the podium, rages on. It's looking like most of these drivers essentially just waiting for a mistake, Nick.
Yeah, absolutely. There's almost nothing else you can do here. I mean, look how close it is there through Britain's. Just so little room to work with here and so few passing opportunities. That being said, though, it looks like Luis Emerton's getting a bit of a toe off of Krejcik.
Emerton for the 2nd lap in a row, much stronger through that chicane, but he just can't get side by side with Martin up into one of the fastest corners on the track. Basically just stuck in a line. We're not missing much down in the GTOs. They're still being led by Olenek, and nothing has changed between Mukanos and Lake. Whoa! Surprise attack deep into the corner. I just happened to look over as that was happening, and Luis Emerton certainly makes sure that he gets it done decisively. Krejcik probably had no idea that was coming.
Yeah, out of nowhere, just went down the inside, and thankfully Krejcik didn't respond by turning the wheel at all, because he had to keep that perfectly straight through there to avoid any contact. Now Emerton's already closing in on the back of John Keefe.
I think before he could even turn the wheel, the car was beside him. You could see the Audi going off. I believe that was Calhoun trying to give them space. As we take a look at Fabian Jungbluth. Oh, and Gerber's hitting traffic now. This is Fabian Gerber, now very much catching up with much more of the pack. That's Reed Miller. Ben Laughter is ahead of him.
Yeah, this was right in the middle of what the Audis were battling for. This was back for 4th and 5th. That battle, as you can see, is kind of broken up.
And John
Keefe and Lake still going at it.
John Keefe being overtaken by his own teammate. Emerton is by. John Keefe now slips down to 4th. The number 9 car is on a tear. 2 positions in 2 laps. He qualified in 3rd, and well, there's good reason for that. He's made up for a somewhat poor start, returned to at least where things have balanced out for him. Let's see if he can pull away from this group now.
Yeah, now John Keefe's going to be more focused, I think, on defending against Martin Krajcik. Krajcik was taking a peek to the inside, making himself known last lap.
007 Cam looking back at Martin Krajcik from on board the Hoosier. He is really, really close, looking to the inside, but there is a car there. That is Sergei Serbin. Oh no! Krajcik goes around. He gets hit by Gerber, Tobias Gerber, and he is off track. There's no contact there, just Martin in deep.
Yeah, he was stuck on the outside there of Serbin. He tried to come back to the apex, tried to come back to the racing line, and so little grip and that really awkward elevation change on the outside there just spun him around, and like you saw, heavy damage for Tobias Gerber.
Jumping up to the front of the GTO field, Nick Mucano still dealing with a lot of pressure from Phil Lake.
Phil Lake got a bad exit there. He got into the grass. That's going to allow, or sorry, Mucanos rather, that's going to allow Lake to close in on him.
He's looking, but there's nothing doing. Second place Fabian Jungbluth is now caught up behind him. He's going to be able to get by one, and he's going to split them momentarily as they'll have to wait patiently through Druids. Unfortunately, I think this came out the worst for Phil Lake, who lost a couple tenths. Emerton going to be up next.
Yeah, I was just about to say, they're going to have quite a few more Nissans, I think, behind him. Emerton and then John Keefe, who currently is going around Arnotzi behind him.
Luis, once again, just not in the best place for Phil Lake. Can't catch a break in traffic. And is it just me, or is Emerton catching Jungbluth slightly?
It wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, looking at the lap time. So, now, some of that might have been traffic, but you take what you can get, especially at a track like this. Emerton and Keefe now, of course, trying to come through. There you see Jungbluth, and there you can see even in the same shot now.
Emerton did a great job. Of course, that was a little bit of luck getting around some of the traffic, because it's all about where you catch that traffic. But yeah, like you said, you take what you can get and you make what you can do with it, and he's doing a great job catching Jungbluth.
And unfortunately for the rest of the cars trying to keep up with Emerton, traffic was not as good for them. Keefe lost a monstrous 5 seconds in that exchange. In fact, he still isn't quite yet past Olenek, our leader in the GTOs. He's overtaking him right now down the front stretch. That battle between Mucanos and Lake has not gone away. In fact, Lake got a great run out of Old Hall. They've also got Tobias Gerber just behind them. He's trying to play very patient. This is being costly for the number 8 car. He's going to get one. Oh, that was a little late to the inside of Mucanos into Island Bend. Martin Krajcik trying to give chase behind. Mucanos somehow doesn't lose the spot. Now Krajcik causing headaches for Phil Lake through Shell Oil Corner.
Yeah, once again, the traffic hurts Phil Lake a lot more than it does Nick Mucanos. That's really going to help Mucanos, because look at this. Mucanos gets caught on the straightaway.
I tell you what, though, Mucanos was great heads up into Island Bend. That is so marginal for the Audis. And he didn't chop down on Krajcik at the last moment. Oh, and what's happened to Emerton? He's off track. This is out of Lodge.
Oh, all by himself, it looks like. That elevation change, the turbo lag, it all caught up to him.
Wow. It snapped in a hurry. He didn't hit the wall, but he lost out to his teammate Keefe, who now finds himself promoted to P3. He haven't even hit the halfway point yet in this race. A lot going down and a lot of laps ticked off. It is still Fabian Gerber, your leader in the GTPs. He took the pole. He's been leading since the drop of the green and has been unfazed other than simply trying to work his way through the GTO cars. Rob Olenek is your leader in the GTOs. However, it's worth pointing out, despite Mukanos and Lake battling and dealing with lots of traffic, they are staying within a second and a half of our leader.
Yeah, they're not letting Olenek get away quite yet.
And from what we've seen, I think a little bit of bad traffic for Rob is all these two need, and it could be a three-way fight for the top spot. Making their way through Druids, over the hump, under the bridge, and down to Lodge. No pit stops to try and play any tricky stuff for these cars. It's all your pace and how you handle traffic.
This is where Phil Lake gets a good run a lot of times. You can see him get a nice apex. So Mukanos was really good there, though.
Down through Denton's into Cascades. This could be one of those corners where you can make a difference. We've seen drivers get fantastic runs out of here, but unfortunately it's not going to be one of those for Lake.
You know, Joe, just a moment ago, we saw Luis Emerton go off, and it looked not great for him. He is already catching his teammate John Keefe once again for third place.
This is phenomenal pace for Emerton. We saw him pass multiple cars to get back into third after a poor start. Now, after another mistake, like you said, he's reeling in that number 11 bit by bit. He's already half a second behind now. Here we look back from the gearbox of John Keefe on Emerton. A bit of more lap traffic. Keith Calhoun just sliding off to the side for them.
Emerton, the Club UK and Ireland driver. I wonder if we've got a home track on our hands with him.
Possibly. Pretty certain he hails from the UK from what we spoke to him. And another bobble from John Keefe. We've seen a few of those today in these Nissans. Emerton doesn't want to pull a risky move into Britain's with his teammate. And another little bit of wheel spin. Keefe certainly struggling with the tires. And he's going to send it up the inside. Nope. Oh, he pulls out, but Keefe doesn't know that. He's going to go wide off the course. Emerton says, thank you very much. That third place is mine.
Yeah, just a little miscommunication through there, it looked like. But regardless, that is going to put Emerton back up into a podium position. See if he can keep it clean on this stint as he tries to chase down what he has left of that gap up to Fabian Jungbluth.
Switched over to the GTO lead because Olenek was being caught by Mukanos and Lake. Maybe make that only Mukanos now. They're split by Johnny Bell, who's running last in the GTPs. Ooh, but he holds up Mukanos something fierce on their way through Clay Hill and Water Tower. So not only does Mukanos lose the gap up to the leader, but falls back into the clutches of Lake once more.
Yeah, Phil Lake not letting him get away.
Ooh, that was a bit of a heart-your-throat moment for that battle for a second. A bobble and an off track for Johnny Bell. Puts him very close to them. He's back and running once again. And has to repass them again, unfortunately. Getting information that Emerton races out of Coventry. Is not too far, at least by my standards. I live out in the western U.S. where everything is far apart. I'm not sure if 2 hours is considered far over in the UK. So as we get a front row seat from onboard Johnny Bell with his battle for P2 in the GTOs. Credit to Mukanos, he hasn't given up this spot since we've looked at it early on in the race. It's just been almost a dead heat.
Still getting held up here by Phil Lake and Mukanos. I'm sure he doesn't want to be overly aggressive getting by them.
Yeah, you can see he's really taken his time. He's not in a battle with anybody. 36 seconds up to the next car, so he's waiting for the safest moment to get through. That gap up to the leader, staying consistent as he almost gets into the back of Lake from Old Hall.
Might see him try to get past here on the outside.
Get one at least.
Think so, yeah.
Maybe two. And just about perfect timing. Maybe not for Mukanos, who has to take an awkward line. Now he's going defensive side by side into Shell Oil. Lake does his best to take advantage. Nothing doing. Gets the run off the corner, but Britain's is a short burst. Unfortunately, now they've also got Fabian Gerber, the overall leader, behind them, who wants through. Behind this all, you can't forget Martin Krejcik, who is still with Tobias Gerber. This is a battle for 5th in the prototypes.
Yeah, Tobias getting chased here.
And he's been missing his nose since I
Yeah.
believe I'm trying to remember who it was he contacted. Actually, I think it was Krejcik behind him.
Yeah, I believe you're right. And now Krejcik is behind him once again, trying to get around him. Missing a little bit of front downforce on that car, I'd imagine.
Most likely. But what's impressive is Krejcik isn't really catching him that quickly. They're going by the car of Serban. Krejcik now gets it to within half a second.
I wonder if Krejcik is dealing with damage of his own. If he was the car that got hit by Tobias Gerber, he might have some steering or suspension damage.
Very true. Or even since he was off track, could be under tray damage. Remember, these cars have that the downforce coming from the underside, so maybe that's compromising his corners. As they come through Shell Oil and across, just tantalizingly close, but having all the difficulty we've come to expect with this circuit to try and overtake. Now, taking a look at the leaders in the GTO, Nick Mukanos has really closed down. It was hovering a little over a second for a long time. Whatever happened, Nick has reeled in Oulton to within 0.3 of a second.
Yeah, he's caught him. He is definitely looking for that position, and he's, I think, caught him at just about the perfect time with about 16 minutes left. I mean, he's paced himself nicely throughout the race. Here comes Fabian Jungbluth to get around him.
Jungbluth will definitely get by Mukanos, but certainly won't get by Oulton for now. And in fact, he gets held up by Oulton, who has to drift out to the racing line. And he takes it way too deep into Shell Oil. He's trying to collect it together. This lets Jungbluth through. Allows Mukanos to re-catch him, but not pass.
Yeah, allowed Mukanos to catch him, but like you said, just he had no grip down there, not enough momentum and speed to get around him. Let's see what he can put together here in the next couple of corners to do so.
Oulton maybe starting to feel a little bit of the pressure. He certainly couldn't withstand it over at Zolder with a bad wreck that forced him to take an early stop, repairs, and then return. But Oulton this time leading the way with 14 minutes to go. Behind them, that's Luis Emerton, third in the prototypes. Should be able to squeak by on the front stretch. Outbreaking them into Old Hall Corner. And lurking behind it all is Phil Lake, sitting in third, about a second behind this battle.
Yeah, Mukano's just trying to he's really just been boxed in the last couple of laps. He's been there on the back of Rob Olenek, but nothing he can do with that.
I wonder if he's waiting for the right chance, maybe. He's certainly shown some pace, and he's been able to chase down Olenek, some of that due to traffic, some of that due to just rifling off good ones. He's hanging right with him, stayed within the tire tracks. And incredibly, with 20 starters today, a track known for being punishing and a high attrition rate typically, especially in higher powered cars, has only seen 2 retirements so far. One Nissan in the form of Paul Ferrer, one Audi in the form of Michael Haynes.
Definitely pretty amazing. Speaks measures of their talent level in this series.
That's John Keefe. Now going to be able to get by, and Olenek can't quite turn into the apex, but manages it well. Not really missing too much anywhere else. You can see one of the only other battles on track right now. That is Gerber coming through, being chased by Krejcik, who still, despite having body parts that Gerber does not, is not able to get by him.
And you can see this is hurting Mukano, says he's actually going to go wide.
And, whoa, that was for the lead, actually. What happened there? Let's take a replay. That was Olenek making a mistake.
Olenek
and
goes
on
wide. Mukano's caught up in more trouble.
Oh, no.
Back down in Shell Oil's corner. Olenek went wide initially. Mukanos was able to slip in underneath him. But I'm guessing he was hoping he didn't have that happen after the problems with Krejcik in front of him.
Oh. Yeah, Krejcik just missed the apex, the third apex there, and I think cut the course. I'm not sure if he was genuinely slow or if he was trying to give the time back due to a cut course penalty. Whatever the case, the car wasn't up to speed while the Audi was, and the two tangled.
So Olenek loses the lead for just a moment. He gets it right back, but he's got Phil Lake now chasing him.
Krejcik unfortunately had to tow to the pits, and indeed, Lake took a look on the outside of Lodge while we were watching that replay, but he's fallen back now to about half a second. A scary moment for Olenek. It looked like the lead was gone, but the racing gods are smiling on him today.
He's going for his third win of the season already. He won at Phillip Island and Circuit of the Americas.
The car we saw off track returning was Aaron Cortez. This is now a battle for the lead in the GTO class. Stark contrast to the GTPs, which sees 20 seconds between P1 and P2. We're right on board with Olenek looking back at Phil Lake. These two have certainly fought each other in these cars plenty of times over the years. Ten minutes to go now. These Audis putting laps in at about a minute 30. Leaves us with maybe 6 or 7 laps left to go.
You mentioned earlier Phil Lake driving mostly the Nissans this year. He switched back over to the GTO class today.
Certainly a testament to the speed of in and around the lake. He was fighting for podiums and potentially wins multiple times this season in the Nissan. Really mostly lost out due to small errors being costly or lap traffic causing trouble. Sometimes even his own class causing him trouble. And here he jumps over, and right away, even though he is experienced in this car, he makes the transition quickly and is fighting for a win here now in the GTOs too.
Yeah, 3 podium finishes for him. And oh, trouble there. He goes drifting just a little bit.
Well, since Yoni Hagner isn't here, looks like Phil Lake trying to put on the show for us. That was a great catch, though. We've got an onboard replay of that one. Maybe the grass under braking. It looked like it was a little far left. Oh,
yeah, a bit of curving,
curb, maybe.
I think. Yeah.
Well, and many times we've seen the four-wheel drive of these Audis can come in handy when you get a little loose like that. Unfortunately, it's not the fast way around. That gap extends from about half a second to 1 second between first and second place in the GTOs. Really was our closest battle, and still is our closest battle, admittedly. This is our leader in the prototypes, Fabian Gerber. Still about 20 seconds ahead of Jungbluth. We have one more car in pit lane now. Aaron Cortez, unfortunately, has also decided that his day is pretty much over. You see Krejcik, another one of the victims of this bumpy course. For a while, I thought maybe we would get a little bit of a battle for P6 in the GTOs, because Reed Miller was relatively close behind Nick Mukanos. But that gap has since extended. There you see Mukanos there in the car hitting the corner now. The 13, the number 13 behind him, that is Reed Miller.
Yeah, I was also taking a peek at that just a moment ago. It looks like, just like you said, that's opened up just a little bit. But it looks like Phil Lake is slowly catching Rob Olenek for the lead. I'm not sure this thing's over.
Yeah, Lake seems to have the legs under him today. We've seen now caught up to the lead pack, and in this case, the lead car, twice. But as Bill Zahn likes to say, it's one thing to catch a driver, it's another thing to pass them. I'm not sure if we're going to be getting any rooster milk out of this one.
Well, the impressive thing, too, with Phil Lake is that he's been able to catch them without traffic, interfering or coming into play. So Phil Lake really catching him purely off of speed.
Ooh, he's hustling the car. You can see him slide it into Lodge. We ride on board within and around the lake. Heading through Lodge, and I spoke too soon. That car that we just caught a glance of was Aaron Cortez coming off the pit lane to try and get a couple more laps in before the clock ticks down. Rob Olenek might be responding now, because he's pushed it back up to 9/10, even a second for a moment. Neither driver willing to give in on this one.
Yeah, and Rob knows how few good passing spots there are on track. I'm wondering if he's just managing the gap right now, trying not to make a mistake in these last 5 minutes.
That could be too. That's a good point. just running your race and taking it easy to make sure you get to the finish line. Olenek, who is our points leader, is going to get a nice haul over Ben Laughter. Milan Arnozzi, who's been a little bit anonymous this race, is going to get a podium, but will also lose out in points to our current leader in the race. There you see Milan, about 6 seconds back from Lake and Olenek, and also 9 seconds ahead of Neidhart. You see the 4th place Dennis Neidhart. Oh, and something happened to Mukanos. And unfortunately, a little bit of traffic caused him to have to head to pit lane. It was John Keefe. And I think there's net code on this one, if I'm honest.
I think so too. Take a look from above. Yeah, it was close, but I agree with you. I think so. Just got a punt from the right rear out of nowhere, really.
Yeah, that didn't look like there was any real physical contact. It was just the unfortunate nature of internet racing. I know he wasn't happy about it over the radio, but I think when he goes back and sees that, should see that probably can't blame Keefe too much. It was a late move, but he is fighting hard against Tobias Gerber, fourth place. So as we watch these two battles with 3 minutes to go, I'm sure Tobias will be happy when this one's all over, said and done. I'm keeping half an eye on this and half an eye on our GTO leaders who have closed in to within 0.2 of a second. Right on board with the number 3, continuing to try to hound something out of Rob Olenek.
I'm sure Phil Lake's hoping for a mistake out of the number 2 car. Very possible as well. We've seen it happen many times today, just running a little bit wide or catching a bit of the curb.
And they do have Johnny Bell coming up behind them, so they will get at least one more car trying to come through traffic-wise before this is said and done. That could play a big effect. It depends on how aware Bell is of the situation.
And we saw earlier Johnny Bell getting by some of the drivers battling for, I believe it was second at the time, and he was very cautious and not aggressive at all trying to get around him. I would be willing to predict that to be the same thing he goes into with this as well.
That was a big run from Lake, but he just couldn't do anything with it up to Druid. So hard to pass into that right-hander. And he may have had a missed shift there because he fell back very quickly off of Rob.
Yeah, that gap definitely opened up, but thankfully in front of him, looked like Rob Olenek caught a little bit of the curb. Definitely not enough to hinder that lead any, but a little bit to help Phil Lake.
We're going to get the white flag this time for Fabian Gerber, our leader in the GTPs, who's got effectively one more corner to go before he sees that white flag. That's Reed Miller staying out of his way. 1 lap to go now here for round 6 in the iRacing Kamel GT Series. It's no contest for the lead of the GTPs, but it is still very, very tight for GTOs. This number 1 car has absolutely sliced through everything. Taking a look at the 2 and 3 cars through Knickerbrook. They're actually not too far ahead of Gerber. No, they are too far ahead of Gerber for him to lap. So they're going to get one more to go to try and settle this out. Down into Lodge. Olenek is looking very strong lately. He was under threat momentarily, but Lake is not able to respond. Old Hall Corner. Just 11 more to go. But only one more corner to go for Fabian Gerber. 3 wins on the cards. Make this 4 now for Fabian, with his main championship rivals not showing, at least in his class, to challenge him. Victory today for Fabian Gerber.
A little bit of traffic interfering with this battle for the GTO lead. Rob Olenek had a couple of guys like Tobias Gerber and John Keefe go by, but it didn't help Phil Lake enough to close that gap significantly.
On board with Lake in second place. Over Hilltop, down towards Knickerbrook. From here on out, really the biggest worry for Olenek is Lodge Corner. It's the last decent place to attempt an overtake. And unfortunately for him, Lake is starting to look a little bit closer, bit by bit. Can he get close enough to send one up the inside potentially? Not the greatest of runs coming off of Druids. I think he's a little bit too far back. Rob Olenek just needs to be smooth on the power, not miss any shifts. Up and over Deer Leap. Redemption after the race earlier this morning. Rob Olenek gets victory here at Oulton Park.
You could see Phil Lake trying to get every inch of racetrack out of that car. Sliding through the last couple of turns, just comes up a little bit short.
Unfortunate for Lake, but great news for Rob Olenek. We're going to take a break as our drivers use a victory lap up. We'll come back with the official results as well as driver interviews. But stick around, because on screen you're going to see all the upcoming races here on the GSRC. lush green scenery here that we have at Oulton Park. We just watched round 6 of the Kamel GT Series, and Fabian Gerber wound up taking the win in the GTPs. He led home Fabian Jungbluth, finishing in second from fourth on the grid. And Luis Emerton eventually found his way back to third, where he started this race, but he certainly had a lot of action to get there. He beat his teammate out, John Keefe, who did very good at the start and then eventually fell back to fourth. He had to fend off Tobias Gerber, who unfortunately went the reverse direction. He was on the front row, and due to just having a bad start and some contact with Martin Krejcik later on, goes from second to fifth. Hideki Koivisto finishes P6, and the last of the GTPs still running is Johnny Bell, a lap down in seventh. Nick?
Yeah, Rob Olenek going to take the win today in the Audi's Phil Lake. What a battle that was all the way down to the last corner. Milan Arnozzi, he had a quiet day, but despite that, he is going to wind up on the podium. He was battling earlier with Dennis Neidhart, but Arnozzi was able to take that spot. Neidhart's going to come home and finish in fourth. Ben Laughter will round out the top five after gaining 2 spots off the start. Reed Miller will follow with Sergey Serbin. Keith Calhoun had problems at the beginning of the race. He's a couple laps down. Nick Mucanos, Aaron Cortez, and Michael Haynes did not start on the grid today.
You see Krejcik and Fair also DNFing in the GTPs. We've got our winner and the GTOs ready to talk to us. It is Rob Olenek coming back after disappointment in Zolder to win in England. Congratulations, Rob.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, feels better after last week.
I'm sure. Now, obviously, there was a lot of pressure this race. You had to deal with some action. At what point did you realize that Phil Lake seemed to have better pace than you? Because it seemed like it took a while for that really to become apparent.
I don't think I ever thought that, but I don't know. He's one of my teammates, so I'll never let him hear me say that. But Nick, I actually feel the worst for. I mean, Nick deserves a win. Nick was fast. Nick got the lead, deservedly so. I definitely didn't want to get it back that way. Feel really bad for Nick.
This track obviously makes it incredibly difficult to pass, especially with that chicane added in there. You had to be aware of that, knowing that Lake was really pressuring you towards the end. Was it mostly focusing on your own driving and just ignoring the mirror?
Yeah, that's mainly what I did. About halfway through the race, the chicane started scaring me. And so I kept going like slower and screwing it up. But I don't know. I mean, if you hit those barrels, you're almost done. So I had the rhythm of it down early and I just lost it. So it's a tough track. The traffic is really tough here. Just kind of lucky to make it through it. When you're in the lead, people give a little more room. So you're really lucky on a busy track like this to be out front.
Well, whether it's luck or skill, whatever the case, you came home with P1 today. Congratulations on the top spot, and hopefully we'll see you again next week.
Okay. Congrats to everyone else, too. Thanks, guys.
That was Rob Olenek, winner in the GTOs. Up next, we have a winner in the GTP class. Nick is talking to Fabian Gerber.
Hello.
Yes, absolutely. Hello, Fabian. 4th win of the season. Looking very strong once again to start, and looked very strong today. Put up a dominant performance.
Yes, my usual opponents weren't here. Phil was driving the Audi, and Arto wasn't here, so I didn't have my usual opponents. But still, it's never easy, and I enjoyed it a lot. Without that much pressure, I could handle traffic really well. That was fun.
Yeah, that's really the only challenge you probably had today was handling traffic. Were there any big scary moments for you getting around the Audis, or all pretty clean and get lucky today?
No, it was all pretty clean. Everyone was conscious of the difficulty, I think, today, so everyone was being careful. So I was careful, they were careful. It all went really well. It was great race, great driving by everyone.
Yeah, indeed it was. Very few DNFs today out of everyone. We were talking about how impressive that was. Hopefully we get to see you back in the next coming weeks. You get to stretch your legs next week at Le Mans. Are you looking forward to that one?
I love Le Mans, but unfortunately I'm not here, so I can't race next week. I'm really sad about that, actually. I'll be back for the Nürburgring.
We'll be looking forward to you coming back for Nürburgring. Always fun to have you in the race. Always fun to see these dominant performances. But congratulations once again on today's race.
Thank you very much, guys. See you soon.
That was our winner in the GTPs. Obviously, Fabian's town watches the broadcast, celebrating his win with the bells in the background. So, as we switch over to GTOs once more, we got Phil Lake ready to talk to us about the other side of the battle. Phil, Rob seems to think that that you weren't faster than him. But what do you have to say to that? Do you think you had better pace than Rob today?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, no, that race didn't go the way I was kind of planning. I got passed by Ben at the start, missed a shift, and so then I had to work to catch the leaders again. And yeah, if the track was a bit wider and you could pass, then that was my win today, I think.
Did you have any plans to try and execute that pass? You kept getting up to him, and it seemed like traffic obviously wasn't helping out too much. And every time you got close, something seemed to happen. Was there a particular place you were looking at potentially to make it stick?
Unfortunately, I caught him in places where it's very dangerous to pass. So what with me just showing up for one race and not being really in part of the championship, it's kind of too risky to throw a move up the inside of somebody that is in the championship. So that was weighing on my mind a little bit. But yeah, it's so hard to pass here. You really need the other person to make a mistake. So although my pace was stronger, Rob didn't make any mistakes. So it was a good drive from him.
Also looked like you channeled a little bit of Joni Hagner at one point in this race with him not being here. Tell us about the moment into Druids where you got all sorts of sideways.
Yeah. My line for there, or at least what I think is quite a good line, is to sort of hop the curb on the left curb just so you can widen the track out a little bit. And yeah, that kicked the rear round on one lap, and I had to I had a bit of a slide through Druids. It was fun.
Well, kept it together, and you still managed to come home in second place. May not have been a win, but you certainly impressed us out on track. Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks, guys. See you next week.
That was Phil in and around the lake, taking second in the GTOs. One more interview for us today. Jungbluth, who takes a well-earned second place, is talking to Nick.
Yeah, absolutely. Caught up with Fabian Jungbluth and a well-earned second place indeed. Not much challenge he had for the lead there, but a hard-charging Lewis Emerton you had to hold off for second.
Yes, after you spun early in the race and having a 12-second gap, the gap went down very fast due to traffic. But at the end, after I lapped the leaders for the final time, I didn't go that fast. Then I could to secure second place. That's why he got so close at the end.
Yeah, we've seen how obviously the battling with getting around Audis, I should say, is hard at this track. But what about battling with cars of your own, like battling with other Nissans like Luis? Is that also just as difficult here? Such high speeds on such a tiny little tight track?
Yes, I would say so, because you have lots fast corners where you need lots of downforce, and if you have a bad aero push, when you go into the crash and hit the wall immediately, I would say. But luckily for me, I didn't have that problem here. I had only fresh air right from the beginning of the race.
We saw a couple of the Nissans like Kraytrick get in trouble from this. Did you have any problems with the turbo lag and the elevation change today at this track, or did you have your setup pretty much well covered off for that?
And luckily, the setup was very much covered all of that problems for me, so I didn't have any problems at all. The only thing that was troublesome was the chicane. At the exit, there is a bump, and if you accelerate over that bump, then you can get wheel spin and spin off. I don't have that problem today.
Oh, very nice. And your setup obviously showed their second place finish. Anyone you want to give a thank you to or a shout out before we let you go today?
Yes, shout out to Keith Ridgely for the setup I used today, for that he posted on the forums like many years or seasons ago. Hopefully he can come back anytime soon, because I think even Fabian Gerber wants some competition back, and there's no competition.
Well, despite that, it was a great race for you, great performance, and hoping to hear from you again soon.
Yeah, thank you very much.
That was second place in GTP class, Fabian Jungbluth. Clearly looking out for the fans, hoping that we could get someone to challenge the likes of Gerber. That's going to close it up for us today. And a big thank you goes out to the Kamel GT series for bringing us back for another season of coverage, as well to iRacing for putting us on the iRacing Esports Network. Make sure and subscribe when you get the opportunity by going to their YouTube page and clicking the big red button. Thanks to the companies that provide the software and hardware for our broadcast listed here on your screen. And additional thanks go to June Lalonde, who provides our wonderful music. See the screen for how to get a hold of more of her great work. Thanks to the team today, Nick, Amjed, and Dougie. If you'd like to find out more about GSRC, including upcoming races, you can find it at globalsimracingchannel.com. You can also check us out on social media. We're on Twitter at GSR Channel, Facebook at Global Sim Racing Channel, and Instagram at GSRC_Graham. Our next race is going to be at Le Mans. That'll be the historic layout. So going to be big speed gained by these drivers by the time they hit the end of that straight away. That'll be Saturday, April 27th at 1 p.m. Eastern. We also have upcoming races for other series listed on the screen, so check those out and mark them down on your calendar. Everybody have a good Easter tomorrow, but until next time, race clean, race hard, and we'll see you on the track.